it's Nia here from the Bead Hold, and today we're going to learn all the very basics of chain wrapping. Wrapping is a wonderful technique because it is so very secure. The only way that your item will come apart is if your wire snaps, which is really unlikely. I've got 20 gauge wire here, which is a good beginner's wire and start. Leave about 5 centimeters of wire sticking out the top of your pliers. Grip firmly. Push away onto a right angle. Swing your pliers up to the top of your right angle. With your finger, push the wire firmly over the top of your round nose pliers and down to the floor. So you can see we have a hook. Don't take your pliers out, that was just to show you. Now we're going to swap to our less dominant hand, which for me is my left hand, and move the wires so they point out to the right. Take this smaller piece of wire and pull it straight towards you, facing toward your heart. Now take your chain nose pliers and watch as I swing. We're going to do 3 tight wraps. Away, change your grip, toward, change your grip, away. If I don't change my grip every time the wire goes straight, I will end up wrapping the wire around the tips of my pliers. So you can see here we have a nice wrap. Slightly wonky, that's okay. Flush cutters are really good. The flat side cuts flush, the open side leaves the little point. So we put the flat side close and snip that off. If we need to, we either take our chain nose pliers and straighten our loop slightly, and if your little cut is sticking out a bit, we can squash it in a little. And if you need to, you can just pop your round nose pliers back in, especially as a beginner, just to make sure you've got the nice round shape. Now, take a bead, slide it on, and you can see that's a nice neat finish. It's almost like the wrap is like having a little bead or a little spacer either side. So now we're going to do the same thing again. This time we will rest our pliers on top of the bead at the same point. So I've done my 90-degree push away, swing my pliers to the top, use my finger and firmly push over the bead, swap hands, move the bead and the wire out to the right hand side. If you have a long piece of wire, you can actually use your fingers if you can pull tightly enough to swing and wrap. The heavier the wire, the harder that is. But by using your proper chain nose pliers, you can really pull that nice and tight. Now this time I'm going to wrap without changing my grip, so you'll see what happens. So I'm just going to go round and round, and you can see I'm getting a nice tight wrap, but it's all curled up around my pliers and that wire is wasted. I won't really be able to use that again. I can take my cutters and snip that off like that, or I can think I'd like to embellish my bead a little more, and I can wrap this wire around to the other side. Now if I'd left a longer piece of wire, I'd be able to go round more because this is quite a large bead of 14mm. When you get to the other side, just give it a little half or one full twist around the wrap at the other end, and then snip your wire off. And that secures your wire wrap to the other side. Wrapping around, especially a few times, is really helpful if you have a not so attractive bead or very plain bead. It can just disguise a bead that's a bit wonky, or just add a bit more interest to a bead that's maybe not as interesting as some of the others you have. Let's do that again. Grip, push away 90 degrees, roll up, finger firmly push over the top of your pliers down to the floor. Swap hands, turning as you go. Move the wires facing right. With your chain nose pliers, grip the end of the wire, pull and wrap tightly. Snip that little end piece off. Push away, roll up, finger tight, roll over and down to the floor. Swap hands, out to the right, and firmly wrap around. Straighten a bit if needed. Now I have a longer piece of wire on this one, and I can leave it in here to get started, or I can just use my fingers. And I'm going to roll around the bead, pulling quite tightly until I get to the other side. And I'll wrap it round once to twice, and I can adjust it afterwards. Snip that off, and this bead has a double wrap around it because I had a longer wire. I can adjust that as I go. Now how about if I want to put these beads together, wrap them straight together? I could put them together with a jump ring or a double jump ring, but if you want something that's going to be super secure, then wrapping something straight together is what you do, and it is a little bit trickier. So let's have a look here. Make my first wrap. Slide my bead on. Start my second wrap all the way until I get into my other hand. Now I'm going to pull this, but I'm going to pull it a bit high and leave a gap here so that I can slide this all the way down. Pop my pliers back in the same way, hold carefully and wrap. Oh, this can be a little bit tricky, and if you have a longer piece of wire, it definitely makes it easier for this when you're joining them together. And I'm going to continue my theme of wrapping this around. This will be another shorter wrap because my wire wasn't as long. Now if I want to be extra clever, I can take my pliers, grip my wire, it's a little bit loose, and I can give it a little twist to make a little shape. And there are my two beads linked together. Wrapping and linking like this takes a little bit more time, but it's especially good on a long flapper style necklace, which can get hitched or caught, and they're much less likely to come apart. Now, these are our most basic pliers. You can do everything with your basic pliers, but if you start to do a lot of wrapping, you'll find that the nylon draw pliers really do help you, especially when you're manipulating coloured wires. We'll finish off this video with a little embellishment of a larger feature bead. And wrap. And what I'm going to do now is wrap around this once till I get to the middle. I'm going to take my round nose pliers, and I'm going to turn a small loop, and I'm going to overturn it. See how that's overturned? Then I'll take my chain nose pliers and grip that loop fully, and I'm going to turn it and turn it, holding gently and carefully with my chain nose pliers until I have a bit of a spiral. Then I'll use my fingers to make more of a spiral, but with more of a gap. And there you see I have an embellishment on my bead. Now to make sure that stays there nicely, I'm going to take a finer wire. This is 24 gauge, you could use 22 or 28, depends on the look that you want and how much wire you have. And I'll slip it underneath here, and I'll make a little wrap. When we wrap these wires together, it makes it a lot more secure. And it looks really good, especially if you use a contrasting wire. So because these beads have some yellow in them, I'm using a gold. And you can wrap it 3 times or 5 times. Odds are better than evens. They look more pleasing to the eye. So if I wrap that 3 times, then I can pull and adjust as much as I like. And snip my ends off carefully. And the beauty of this is if you don't like it, you can just snip there and still you have your wrapped bead and you haven't wasted too much wire or energy or time. If you don't like your spiral so much, especially once you've tied it in, you can unroll it. You can always snip it and do it again. This time, for example, you could make it more open. This is my favourite type. And then you could think that looks great, but oh, that middle bit is just a bit too close. So then you can just go in there and snip it. And if you wanted, you could put your pliers back in and turn it a little bit more. Thanks for joining me. Do some practicing, have some fun, and you'll be ready for the next more complex video.